All right, we're going to do another breakdown video. This is regarding Eleanor Hill, the Staff Director of the Joint House Inquiry. And she's going to bring up some points and we'll go over them.
Director Ms. Eleanor Hill is now recognized for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Joint Committee. In prior hearings, we have, as you know, discussed very specific information sharing issues relating to the performance of the intelligence community prior to the events of September 11th. Today, I will discuss what our review has to date uncovered regarding more systemic aspects of information sharing between the agencies of the intelligence community and between those agencies and other federal, state, and local entities. Before addressing the issue of information sharing, however, I would like to first summarize our review of what we have found the non-intelligence community agencies knew about the hijackers. In short, we have not found any evidence that non-intelligence community agencies had any information prior to September 11th that the 19 individuals who took part in the attacks had terrorist ties. We also found that the non-intelligence community agencies were, for the most part, focused on specific threats to their areas, their particular areas.
When she talks about non-intelligence agencies, she's talking about the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, the agency is not involved with criminal investigations.
Responsibility, such as airline hijackings or an individual terrorist crossing the border. We did not find any significant and sustained focus on a war against bin Laden, in which terrorist operatives might launch multiple attacks against the continental United States.
Here's the problem, right? Because I've stated this before in a couple of other videos, where the agency like the FBI, who were made well aware that there were a number of Arab terrorists inside the United States, going as far back as 1996, okay? And that was through the Bajinka plot, where Arizona FBI, as well as New York City counter-terrorism, were trying to warn their superiors that there were a number of entities inside the United States training at flight schools. Now, with the Bajinka plot, which was an international terrorist operation that involved domestic and foreign flights going to and from the United States, in which individuals headed by Ramzi Youssef and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, individuals like allegedly Wali Amin Shah and Abdul Hakim Murad, who were going to put bombs on planes, 12 planes, and have them all crash, explode over the Pacific through 1-minute intervals. So when this operation was uncovered in the Philippines investigators interrogated Abdul Hakim Murad, who was caught, and he told them that there was a number of different sections within the Bajinka plot. So there were 3 stages. They were going to assassinate Pope John Paul II. They were going to put bombs on 12 airliners, and then they were going to hijack one airliner and crash it into CIA Langley. They also found out, as they interrogated Murad further, that there were sleeper cells inside the United States training at flight schools. And it was anywhere between 20 to 25. Now, this information was collected by Philippines, its lead investigator, Rodolfo Mendoza, and shared with the FBI. He gave it to them. And he later told a reporter from the Associated Press after 9/11 that, they were shocked that they didn't do anything with the report. And this is what Hill is suggesting here, is that the FAA were not made aware about security issues or plots regarding the hijacking of airliners. Question is why?
Using such tactics as airplanes as weapons. While the FAA, the Customs Service, the State Department, and INS each had data concerning the 19 hijackers, that data was not related to their terrorist activities or associations. As a result, none of this information would by itself have aroused suspicions regarding a planned terrorist attack within the United States.
Well, that data would certainly be made known to the CIA because they're the lead agency involved with the Yemen hub, the Al-Qaeda communications hub in Sana'a, Yemen. And they have base stations in Pakistan and in Afghanistan. It's not like they were unaware that there was Al-Qaeda militant training camps like Tanaq Farms or Al Farouk or Jihad Wall. And it wasn't made unknown to them. I mean, the CIA was well aware, even in the mid-90s, when bin Laden first arrived to Afghanistan after he relocated from the Sudan, forced out by the State Department. And the CIA was even monitoring him there. And that's the early 90s, before Al-Qaeda even formed. So it's not like they didn't know that these training camps operated. They knew, they didn't share that information for whatever reason.
Instead, these agencies had routine information concerning the vital statistics, travel, immigration, and medical status of some of the hijackers. For example, prior to September 11th, the FAA had airmen records on hijackers Marwan al-Shehi, Mohammed Atta, Hani Hanjour, and Ziad Jarrah. The INS also had records concerning the 19 hijackers, specifically the type of visa and the duration of the stay adjudicated by the immigration officer for each individual. Finally,
Well, I want to talk about that issue for a minute. So a lot of these muscle hijackers that came and were involved with 9/11, they passed through the Saudi consulate in Jeddah and Riyadh. The Jeddah consular officer was J. Michael Springman, and he noted something that was consistent in a lot of these applications, was that a lot of these people couldn't speak English well, didn't know where they were going, didn't know who they were meeting, and they had very little money on their person. So he found these applications suspicious and suspended them. I think it was a total of maybe 18 or 20 of them. And he was overridden by his superior, Shania Steiger, who has connections with the Central Intelligence Agency. And he still, he does interviews and does TV reports where he basically says that, I don't know why Steiger overruled me about the suspension of these applications. And basically it was because we don't want to offend Arabs from entering the United States because there was such a prejudice toward them. And that's not what the United States wanted. And I think that's malarkey.
As Customs Service officials have advised the staff that the only information Customs had concerning the 19 hijackers prior to September 11th was contained in the routine forms that they filled out when they arrived in the United States. Moving on to the general topic of information.
For example, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, they're known Al-Qaeda operatives, and that's coming from the CIA and the NSA, who was listening into the phone calls of the Yemen hub. This is even known to the FBI. Now, they should have been on a watch list. And if you saw my video yesterday regarding the breakdown of Carl Levin interviewing Coke for Black, CIA Counter-Terrorism Center, he even says why the CIA didn't put these two guys on a watch list, which INS would have been made well aware of, because once they're on a terrorist watch list, that list is handed over to the Immigration Naturalization Services, in which they can, restrict these individuals from entering the country. Would have it mattered? Probably not, because back in 1990, Omar Abdel Rahman of the Gamma Islamiyah, Egyptian Islamic radical group, and he was a known terrorist. He was on a terrorist watch list. And when he went for a US visa application, he was not approved, not once, not twice, but 3 times. and he was on a terrorist watch list. However, the people at the embassy station who was approving his applications were CIA officers.
And sharing, during the course of our interviews, intelligence and non-intelligence personnel alike complained that a range of political, cultural, jurisdictional, legal, and bureaucratic issues are ever-present hurdles to information sharing. Prior to the passage of the USA Patriot Act, many suggested that law enforcement information was not adequately shared with the intelligence community. The reverse was also apparently true, despite amendments to the National Security Act in the 1990s, which were designed to make clear that foreign intelligence could be collected for and shared with U.S. law enforcement agencies. We were told that not all threat information in possession of the intelligence community or law enforcement agencies is necessarily shared with agencies that need it the most in order to counter the threats. For example, the FAA was not provided a copy of the FBI's Phoenix memorandum prior to September 11th.
Now, okay, for those who don't know anything about the Phoenix memo, it was written by agent Phoenix field office by the name of Ken Williams. And I've interviewed him on my podcast, in which the Phoenix memo describes through an informant by the name of Henry Ellen, who is a businessman in Arizona. He's also a Muslim convert, who basically found out that there were a number of Arab fundamentalists that were in Phoenix and I think Scottsdale that were training at flight schools. Now, Arizona is #1 in the country when it comes to a number of flight schools. It's the best in the country. And that this information was shared with Ken Williams, in which he wrote a memo called the Phoenix Memo. It's called the Phoenix Memo, in which it warns to a number of FBI officials about terrorists training in Arizona at flight schools, wanting to use them as weapons. And this memo was basically ignored by the director, Louis Freeh, as well as future director Robert Mueller, who was the director 1 month prior to 9/11. And George Bush, the president, basically didn't read this memo until the following year. The memo was sent out to a number of agencies, especially Minnesota, New York, was read by John O'Neill at least, and a couple of others. But nobody gave it precedence. And if they did, basically would have been another reason for FAA to ensure better security at the airlines. Maybe that's the reason why, huh? It wasn't shared and disseminated with the non-intelligence community. That could lead to that conspiracy, could be.
2001, and still did not have a copy 2 weeks after the matter had become public in early 2002. In another example, the CIA did not provide this Department of State with large numbers of intelligence reports that included the names of terrorist suspects until shortly after September 11th, 2001.
Yeah, she's talking about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi.
The reasons for this reluctance to share range from a legitimate concern about the protection of intelligence sources and methods to a lack of understanding of the functions of other agencies.
Anyway, we already found out through the 9/11 Commission and Joint House Inquiry that there was one analyst, CIA case analyst, who is hidden behind a partition, but his actual name is Clark Shannon, because I know the story that he was elucidating to the members of the committee about in regards to meeting certain FBI officers in Washington, D.C. about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, in which he told them, I'm not permitted to share information about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi because the CIA, my CIA superiors had told me not to. And George Tenet would later lie about that and said that we never told him that. Would have believed,
The
right?
vast majority of the information related to the hijackers or to threats posed by aircraft came to the non-intelligence community agencies from the CIA, the National Security Agency, and the FBI. According to officials from the Departments of Transportation, State, Energy, Defense, and Treasury, Unless information in the possession of the CIA, NSA, and the FBI is shared on a timely basis, they are unable to include dangerous individuals on various watch lists to either deny them entry.
Yeah, timely reports, right? Because the CIA knew about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi while they were inside the United States for 16 months. It didn't share that with anybody, including the State Department or the FBI, until August of 2001.
Into the United States or apprehend suspected terrorists while in the United States. The State Department, the Immigration and Naturalization Service, and the U.S. Customs Service all maintain watch lists of named individuals. The Federal Aviation Administration, the Drug Enforcement Administration, INS, and other agencies also perform a limited amount of information collection designed to place individuals on watch lists. The staff review to date has found no single agency or database or computer network that integrates all counterterrorism information nationwide. Information.
And what does that tell you? Even in the late 1990s and mid 1990s, this technology didn't exist. These guys were basically always crying poor and broke, and you always see it even to the current day. Oh, the CIA and the FBI officials, they'll go before like a House Appropriations Committee and ask for more funding because they lack the manpower and staff and technology to do their job properly. Meanwhile, where's all this money going? Well, it's going into the pockets of, the higher ups, the superiors.
About the hijackers and about Al-Qaeda can be found in disparate databases spread among a range of intelligence and civilian agencies. As exemplified by the Phoenix communication, FBI information related to possible Al-Qaeda terrorists was often scattered in various regional offices and not shared with the FBI headquarters or with other agencies. Furthermore, law enforcement, immigration, visa, and intelligence information related to the 19 hijackers was not organized in any manner to allow for any one agency to detect terrorism-related trends and patterns in their activities. Numerous officials stated that there are many hurdles to sharing information. A major issue, for example, relates to the availability of properly cleared personnel. Some federal agencies we visited, which did not have personnel cleared for sensitive compartmented information, or SCI data, advised that they could have benefited from receiving more specific data on potential terrorists. We were also told that many state and local agencies do not have personnel cleared for even the lowest level of access to national security information, let alone SCI access. As a result, while appropriately cleared FAA, TSA, INS, and Department of State officials may receive significant intelligence information, they may be unable to disseminate data within their organization or to state and local officials because the potential recipients are not cleared to receive it.
That's a reason for this, is to protect information from going into the hands of other agencies without a warrant, right? That's why there's a FISA warrant. These walls exist for a reason. So you can go through the proper channels and through the proper means of ascertaining this information. Why you want this information? Who is this information going to? Who is this investigating? All those walls are now down because September 11th attacks, the main argument from agencies like the CIA and the FBI and the NSA basically said, well, there's too many barriers that we had to go through. We couldn't act on the information in time. So what they did was break down all the walls. Now they don't need a warrant to check on your information. They could just collect it. In fact, that's what the NSA did. And under Barack Obama, it was even worse because he gave them an extra blank check that Bush gave them the first time and basically said, listen, we don't have to worry about possessing Americans' information. We're just going to allow the NSA to ascertain that information without a warrant, and we're going to go through phone companies like AT&T. And there's a big, huge investigation about this in 2000, I think it's 6. Go Google's room 641A. It was basically a room in, I think it was AT&T headquarters in California, I want to say San Fran. And it was basically this guy, this technician named Mark Klein, who basically went into the building and saw this room that he wasn't, he's familiar with the building. He said, well, what's in this room? And he didn't have a key for it. Well, it was basically the NSA's room that was, they built this room that had like this data collecting machinery that was collecting data through pipes that were being fed underneath the ocean and through and collecting data, including emails, phone calls, text messages from unwitting Americans, citizens, even foreigners, without a warrant, and allowed by AT&T. I believe it was AT&T. Room 641A, look it up.
Another difficulty mentioned repeatedly is the originator control or ORCON caveat. Agencies that generate intelligence impose this caveat when disseminating raw and finished intelligence to prohibit further dissemination without their approval. Thus, an agency may receive very important information that could be of use to a third agency that is not a recipient, but may be unable to share it because of the caveat. Although this matter can be resolved through agreed upon procedures, the process can be lengthy and cumbersome and may not meet the near real-time lines often required to track and apprehend terrorist suspects.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. Room 641A is located Folsom Street in San Francisco, was occupied by AT&T. And it basically was a room 25 feet by 48 feet wide. And it had a NARIS STA 6400, which was a device designed to intercept and analyze internet communications at very high speeds. And it is fed by fiber optic lines from beam splitters installed in fiber optic trunks carrying internet backbone traffic. The guy who found the room was Mark Klein, an AT&T technician, and he basically said that there were similar black rooms, as he called them, that were operated at facilities around the country. So this was how they broke down those walls that were meant to prioritize privacy for American citizens. All that was gone after 9/11.
We were told that because information sharing is inconsistent and haphazard, agencies have tried various means available to them to circumvent the hurdles. These include signed memorandum of agreements with other agencies, the use of detailed employees to other intelligence and law enforcement agencies, participation in joint task forces, and attempts to design and field common databases. I want to, at this point, just briefly go through what a number of different agencies told us during our staff discussions with them. And I'll start with the FAA and the Transportation Security Administration. Following the hijacking of a TWA aircraft in the Middle East in the mid-1980s, the FAA established a small office, which is now a part of the Transportation Security Administration, to review the incoming intelligence regarding threats to aviation. The intelligence is translated into information circulars, emergency amendments, and security directives for the aviation industry. The circulars and directives are issued to domestic and foreign airlines and to the airports to advise them of current and potential terrorist threats. They are also provided to the intelligence community and law enforcement agencies. Prior to September 11th, the FAA had issued a number of circulars and directives as a direct result of intelligence received from the intelligence community regarding extremist Islamic groups. These FAA publications advise the airlines of the methods that might be used by such groups to hijack an airplane or to plant explosives in airplanes. None, however, has been found that discussed crashing planes into buildings.
Yeah, because up until that point, the only time we had intelligence about terrorists wanting to crash the plane instead of, land the plane and making demands, which was the traditional hijacking method. And that's coming from secular Arab terrorists like Hezbollah. So you had these new idea of using the planes as weapons, because after the Bojinka plot was uncovered, it is suspected that they would be looking for bombs on planes. What they wouldn't have made available in terms of strengthening security was to the cockpit door, or to do more careful searches about individuals coming out of countries that are known to have terrorist training camps, in which terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and their wish to crash planes into targets. And that was made known in 1996, like I said before, with the Bojinka plot. And also there were reports about the Algerian Islamic group who tried to hijack airline France Air 8989, in which they said it was going to be a traditional hijacking, but it was made known that they were going to hijack the plane and crash it into the Eiffel Tower. But that plan failed.
The intelligence community is required by law to provide the Department of Transportation with intelligence concerning international terrorism. As a result, the department receives intelligence from the CIA, the Department of State, the FBI, the NSA, and DIA. However, transportation officials advise the staff that they do not believe that they receive all the available intelligence that is needed to perform their mission. In their view, the agencies that collect the information make decisions on what is relevant for and what should be shared with the Department of Transportation. The issue reportedly is one of context and depth of understanding. By not receiving the sum total of the intelligence on all transportation issues, the Transportation Security Administration may not be able to connect events or to link suspicious activities.
Right.
TSA officials stated that although they can submit their requirements to the intelligence community through established procedures, there is nothing that requires the community to collect against those requirements. Turning to the Immigration and Naturalization Service, INS, the INS maintains records on all visitors who arrive in the United States. INS officials told the staff that the Law Enforcement Support Center, or the LESC, in Burlington, Vermont, is a key data sharing center designed to support other law enforcement agencies. The LESC assists in determining the status of detainees or to find persons. INS officials stated that the August 2001 notice to watch list Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Midhar was not accompanied by any specific notion that indicated that the INS should use all means possible to find these two suspects.
Whose fault is that? That's the CIA right off the bat, because they're the ones who collected the intelligence regarding Al-Qaeda. That's why Alex Station was created in the first place. Alex Station is a virtual station meant to track Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda in the world. So they collected this information about Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Midhar going all the way back to Sana'a, Yemen in 1999, right? And they knew that they had US visas. They knew they were coming into the country. In fact, they knew they were inside the United States. But then they lied, and Richard Blee, who's the deputy chief of Alex Station from 1999 to 2002, he went before the National Security Board or National Security Briefing and told the people there, like Richard Clark, Condoleezza Rice, and Colin Powell, that the CIA lost track of them. And then later, in August of 2001, changed his mind and said, oh, they're inside the United States. Well, why weren't they telling them that in January of 2000, when Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi were inside the United States, well known to the CIA and the NSA? That's the question, right? Why didn't they tell the FBI or State Department? Why? Were they protecting them? Were they trying to turn them as agents, double agents? I don't know.
INS officials said that had they been told to put the highest priority on the search, they would have used the LASC and believe they may have found the two suspects prior to September 11th.
Right, because they would have been in the database for them, and they could have shared that with the FBI. And since this is a domestic matter, the FBI would be in charge, and they would either monitor them or detain them. And that part of 9/11 wouldn't have happened. And they're both involved with the hijacking of American Airlines Flight 77, which crashed into the Pentagon.
The Defense Intelligence Agency. The director of DIA chairs a standing committee that serves as an integrating mechanism for the Department of Defense. It is called the Military Intelligence Board, or MIB. DCI representatives usually attend and participate in its discussions. Over time, the MIB has wrestled with information sharing issues prior to September 11th. According to DIA representatives, information sharing issues such as restrictive caveats, handling of information in virtual and collaborative workspaces, limited distribution to senior officials only, and support to Homeland Defense have been discussed by the MIB since at least the mid-1990s. For example, the need to establish an information sharing mechanism was addressed at least as early as February 1995 in the context of multi-agency operations in Haiti. Senior DIA officials told the staff that information sharing issues are not new to the intelligence community and are not limited to the context of September 11th. According to them, the basic legal, community, cultural, and technological barriers have been understood for years. After the USS Cole attack, the DIA reportedly took significant steps to alter its structure, processes, products, and policies associated with terrorism analysis.
Right, and they also had their Operation Able Danger, which was a data mining collection, a operation which involved a core group of people from the Defense Intelligence Agency and the Land Information Warfare Activities Division, which were in charge of the analytical lead as well as the operational body headed by people like Scott Philpott and Anthony Schaefer. And they collected an enormous amount of data without any help from the CIA or the FBI or anybody else. And they had 3.5 terabytes of information, which was outlined in a number of charts, which was constructed by Orion Scientific Corporation, in which showed a large scale network involving a number of people inside the United States, as well as other countries as well. And it was much bigger than anybody even anticipated. But they were ordered to destroy that information because, according to the Department of Defense lawyers, the information they got collecting on members of the Hamburg cell, and they were deemed US persons because they had visas. Mohammed Atta, Marwan al-Shayh, Ziad Jarrah. Later in 2006, when the Senate Select Committee of Intelligence investigated the matter, which was chaired by Arlen Specter, an official by the name of William Dugan basically testified that about the legality of US persons. Arlen Specter told him straight up, is Mohammed Atta considered a US person? And William Dugan flatly said no. Now, if that's the case, the information should have been destroyed because according to the Department of Defense, any information collected on a US person withheld over 30 days has to be destroyed. Here's the Department of Defense basically saying the information really shouldn't have been destroyed because they're not considered US persons, because they're born in a foreign country and they're here temporarily.
DIA officials advised that the DIA now challenges its analysts to think out of the box and to exploit all relevant information, including open source reporting. They also stated that DIA has implemented mechanisms that allow more effective receipt and dissemination of critical intelligence information. According to DIA personnel, there have been mixed results with the intelligence community partnerships. For example, the mere act of assigning an analyst to another organization does not always ensure a greater level of access to information or more open sharing of information.
Yeah, that's no more evident than Alex Station, which had FBI agents assigned to it. People like Mark Rossini, Doug Miller, Ed Getz, Margaret Gillespie, later on Jack Clunan, in which the CIA knew where they were coming from and hated John O'Neill, who was head of the counterterrorism unit in New York, and saw them as John O'Neill's people and treated them like crap. And, you know, the FBI found out about a cable where Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi were entering the United States, and they tried to warn Washington, D.C., and they couldn't tell they couldn't tell Washington, D.C. about the information because the information came from the CIA. Reason is why? That's the question.
DIA acknowledged that its analysts who are detailed to counterpart organizations do not have unfettered and unconditional access to all relevant terrorist information.
Right.
Former DIA Director Admiral Thomas Wilson explained to the staff that information sharing implies that one, quote, owns the information, close quote, a concept with which he does not agree. According to Wilson,
Yeah, but the most important commodity in the world is information, because with information, you could control presidents, leaders, anyone. That's what you could do with information. And that's why the most powerful agencies in the world are intelligence agencies. Look up Five Eyes. And for those who are not familiar with Five Eyes, it's basically 5 countries which are have the largest intelligence agencies in the world. And I think it's the United States, Great Britain, New Zealand, Australia. I want to say Germany, maybe. I'll look it up. Australia, Canada, right? New Zealand, United Kingdom, United States. In fact, for those who don't know, United Kingdom has the largest intelligence agency in the world, the GCHB or the GCHQ, and the NSA is second in the United States. But those 5 countries, now it's bigger. Like there's like 20 or 30 countries now. But at the time, though, that Five Eyes was basically a coordination of all those agencies sharing intelligence with one another. And it started back in 1941 during the Second World War. And after 9/11, it basically was expounded to many countries. And now it's the whole world.
Wilson, agencies need to change their culture and shed the belief that they own the information. The information belongs to the United States government and the entire intelligence community, at least in his view. Turning to the Department of Treasury, several Treasury Department components receive intelligence relating to financial matters from the CIA, the NSA, the FBI, and other intelligence agencies. Officials in Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, and the U.S. Customs Service reported to the staff that they submit intelligence requirements to the intelligence community, but have no assurance that the intelligence will be collected and provided to them on a timely and regular basis. The Secret Service at Treasury.
What does that tell you? I mean, basically, she's elucidating to the committee about non-intelligence agencies like the FAA, like INS, like the Department of Treasury, Department of State, all these agencies basically who are dependent on intelligence, especially foreign intelligence, CIA, signals intelligence from the NSA, regarding terrorism. And if they're not getting these reports in time, that's what she's saying, in a timely fashion, they're not getting these reports on time, they can't make the necessary adjustments of security regarding the American people, not just the agencies themselves, right? They can't do their jobs properly, and they're the ones who basically are under the gun. That didn't happen with the CIA. That didn't happen with the NSA. We know there's malfeasance there. Whether it was intentional or not, that's a matter for debate. But did anybody from the CIA get fired after 9/11 attacks? No. Anybody from the NSA? No. Nobody did. Not even from the FBI, who covered up the fact after 9/11, not before.
Does occupy a unique position because of its primary mission to protect the president. According to the Secret Service, it does receive the intelligence that is necessary for it to perform that particular mission. Post September 11th, U.S. Customs officials used information available in Treasury databases to develop a comprehensive analysis of the travel, finances, and linkages of the hijackers. Specifically,
Right, the finances, which were partly from foreign agents, someone like a Mustafa al-Hasnawi, who's in Guantanamo, who sent money wire transfers to Khalid al-Mihdhar, Mohammed Atta, Nawaf al-Hazmi. Ramzi bin al-Shib was another Pakistani terrorist named Omar Saeed Sheikh, who said that he received money from the former deputy director of the ISI, Pakistan ISI, Mahmoud Ahmed, $100,000. Just days later after 9/11, he was deposed from his position. Omar Saeed Sheikh actually just got out of prison, even though he said that he was not involved with the murder and kidnapping of former Wall Street Journal reporter Daniel Pearl.
U.S. Customs Service analysts
And Saeed Sheikh, trained by the Pakistan ISI.
Suspicious activity reports, currency or monetary instrument reports, and currency transaction reports obtained from the Treasury Department. Much of the analysis was completed by November 2001. Customs officials advised that the majority of the information used in that analysis to show the domestic and international activities and associations of the hijackers came from law enforcement databases, specifically the Interagency Border Inspection System, or IBIS, and not from intelligence. According to the Customs Service, there are over 30,000 users of IBIS, but it has no formal connection apart from the FBI's participation to the intelligence community. Turning to the Department of State, State Department officials advised the staff that at least 1,500 CIA Central Intelligence reports containing terrorist names were not provided to the tip-off watch listing program until after September 11th, 2001.
Figures, right? That's really convenient, right? Now, of course, we can't add the muscle hijackers because they really didn't know what was going on until a couple of weeks prior to the event. However, I mean, if we're going to blame the pilots, right, the suspected pilots like Mohammed Atta, Marwan al-Shehhi, Hani Hanjour, and Ziad Jarrah, they were allegedly at Afghan training camps. And we know for sure that Ziad Jarrah and Mohammed Atta met because there's video of them meeting together at Tanak Farms in 2000. There's video, but there's no sound, but there's video of it. How come they weren't watch listed? It's funny because in 2001, Ziad Jarrah passed through, I want to say it was Lebanon, where he was home from, or the United Arab Emirates. That's going to kill me. I can't think. I'm going to look it up. It was a man. I'm gonna look it up actually because it's important. He stopped that. It was after his trip to Afghanistan. shoot, I can't, oh man, that's gonna kill me. All right, I got it. He passed through the United Arab Emirates. Okay, and this is after his trip to Tannic Farms. That's right. Now, on his person was basically incriminating evidence that he was in Afghanistan. Now, at this point, Afghanistan was a hotspot for Al Qaeda and airline industry, especially overseas, were quite wary of young Arab men that were coming out of Afghanistan through their passports, and they would be held under different scrutiny, right? So here's the Jar, who was basically going through January 30th, 2001, and he was held over because they found in his luggage manuals written in Arabic from Afghanistan about training at terrorist camps. It was like almost like telling people, hey, look, I'm a terrorist. I went to Afghanistan. So United Arab Emirates officials called the CIA because he was going to Florida, right from here. And the CIA basically told United Arab Emirates security officials to let him go. There's no reason to hold him. No reason to hold him. Here's a guy who basically is screaming terrorist in his luggage. It's on his passport. He's coming from Afghanistan. You want this guy in the country? Well, he did. He entered the country. There's another breakdown for you. Were INS aware? American United INS was made aware? Was the FAA made aware? Nope. Another fault line through the CIA, huh?
After an analysis of those CIRs was completed, the names of approximately 150 suspected terrorists were identified, and 58 new suspected terrorist names were added to the tip-off watch list. State Department officials advised that they have had continuing difficulty obtaining data for watch listing purposes from the National Crime Information Center's Interstate Identification Index that is managed by the FBI. The events of September 11th, 2001 have led to an almost universal acknowledgement in the U.S. government of the need for consolidating and streamlining collection, analysis, and dissemination of information concerning threats to the United States and its interests. According to the President's National Strategy for Homeland Security, the intelligence contributes to every aspect of Homeland Security and is a vital foundation for the Homeland Security effort. The strategy recognizes that U.S. information technology is the most advanced in the world, but that our information systems have not adequately supported the Homeland Security mission. According to the strategy, the U.S. government spends about $50 billion per year on information technology.
Wow, that's a ton of money. I was not made aware of that. And yet you get agencies like the CIA, the NSA, and the FBI, and the DI, they're all crying broke. We need more money. We're lacking manpower. We don't have the analytical capabilities of ascertaining and transcribing the data. And they're always basically complaining about more and more and more. And where's this money going to? The pockets of the management.
But the systems purchased are not compatible between the agencies of the federal government or with state and local entities. The strategy acknowledges that legal and cultural barriers often prevent agencies from exchanging and integrating intelligence and other information. In response to these problems, the strategy first calls for integrating information sharing across the federal government through the Critical Infrastructure Assurance Office. The strategy also calls for integrating information sharing across state and local governments, private industry, and among the U.S. citizenry. Using modern information technology, more information is to be shared among various databases. Finally, the strategy calls for the adoption of standards for information that is in electronic form and is relevant to Homeland Security. According to the strategy, terrorist-related information from the databases of all government agencies with responsibilities for Homeland Security is to be integrated. The Department of
This should have happened in the early 1990s when we had other older Arab terrorist groups like Abu Nidal, who were considered, the most notorious terrorists in the world at that point. We should have had the databases as far back as then. We should have had the intelligence agencies on the same page while adhering to the provisions protected and afforded to American citizens. We don't have any of that now. Yeah, we have a national database regarding having the capabilities of sharing pertinent data at the drop of a dime. That's what happens when you evolve technology-wise. However, the coordination between the agencies should have been addressed way back. And the church committee hearings, which basically took place in 1977, which basically showed that the CIA, and through their many illegal operations, including MK Ultra, in which they destroyed most of those records, which is a mind altering operation. And I don't have to get into that. That's a whole freaking, I could do a podcast on that. Yeah, I mean, look, this interfighting between the agencies should have been addressed a long time ago. But it's always when a huge event, which actually kills people or threatens the lives of people, basically has to kill people in order to say, oh man, maybe we should remedy this. Well, it shouldn't come at the cost of human life to basically address the security lapses or the problems of bureaucrats within these agencies.
Justice, the FBI, and other federal agencies, as well as numerous state and local law enforcement agencies, will then be able to use data mining tools to apply this information to the Homeland Security mission. In recent years, a number of commissions established by the Congress have also reported on the ability of the United States to respond to terrorist events and have recommended that steps be taken to encourage closer cooperation between the intelligence and law enforcement communities. One of the mechanisms established by Congress, the Advisory Panel to Assess Domestic Response Capabilities for Terrorism Involving Weapons of Mass Destruction, looked very closely at the issues relating to the sharing of counterterrorism intelligence with state and local officials. The advisory panel was established in 1999 and was chaired by then Governor James Gilmore of Virginia, who will be appearing as a witness here this morning. The advisory panel issued 3 reports in 1999, 2000, and 2001. In its first report, the panel reported that state and local officials had expressed a need for more intelligence and for better information sharing among entities at all levels regarding potential terrorist threats. The report stated that while the panel was acutely aware of the need to protect classified national security information and the sources and methods by which it may have been obtained, it believed more could be done to provide timely information up, down, and laterally at all levels of government to those who need the information to provide effective deterrence, interdiction, protection, and response to potential threats. The panel's second report stated that the potential—
And what's wrong with that, right? Cohesion between the agencies and the battle and the fight on the war on terrorism, right? Or Al-Qaeda at that point, right? Well, Anthony Schaefer of Able Danger of the Defense Intelligence Agency once said that he was naive to think that when he hosted CIA analysts about the DIA's program, Able Danger, CIA basically told him, you're a threat to our Alex station. We're not going to help you because you're going to steal our thunder. That's what they told Schaefer, right? And Schaefer later said that even when the Department of Defense was basically making it harder for him to do his job, Able Danger, in his unit, which was Stratus Ivy, he had a military unit that was helping in Able Danger. They took that unit away from him. And then later, they told the analytical team of Able Danger that you couldn't use the information because it's U.S. person, they had to destroy it. All this basically he saw as pressure, unjustified pressure, even from his own Department of Defense. He said, I was naive to think that everybody would be on the same page in the fight against an enemy who wants to do harm to the country. Whether you want to, now this leads to conspiracy theories. Now, I'm a conspiracy theorist, but like the fringe conspiracy theorists, right? You can't blame them now. Like, oh, maybe they wanted this to happen, or maybe they're in on it, or maybe they operated on it, right? Those are reasonable questions. But when you start saying no hijackers, no planes, or if you're Simon Shack, you just make up stuff and you sound ridiculous. And I think that's just meant to degrade the truth movement in general. But it leads to questions from conspiracy theorists about, hey, why weren't they on the same page? What's wrong? And those are great questions to ask. And we could get to the bottom of it. I mean, we could show names here about malfeasance, maybe even foreknowledge.
Connection between terrorism originating outside the United States and terrorist acts perpetrated inside the United States means that foreign terrorism may not be easily distinguished from domestic terrorism. In its third and final report, the panel described the results of a survey it had commissioned that substantiated the view that state and local entities are in need of threat assessments and better intelligence concerning potential terrorist activities.
Threat assessment reports, that comes from the agencies involved with the close monitoring of like terrorist individuals and suspects and groups. Okay, now that's the CIA's job. The FBI, who I think had the best counterterrorism unit in all of the United States, and that's the New York City counterterrorism unit, because 1993 World Trade Center bombing, that was like considered the second biggest terrorist incident in the world. And many people don't know the first terrorist incident in the United States came with the assassination of Rabbi Meir Kahane by El Sayed Nosser. A lot of people don't realize that was the first terrorist act in the United States. People tend to forget that. But the FBI screwed that up too, because we had foreign intelligence, especially Israelis, who were monitoring, at the very least, Mohammed Saleh, who was involved with renting the Ryder truck that was used to house the bomb, that was used to blow up the basement levels of the North Tower. And on the application was a phone, an address and a phone number to a person by the name of Josie Hadass, who is an Israeli Mossad agent. Why didn't we investigate that further? What did she know? Well, they covered that up too. So there's no cohesion with these agencies, and there's no honesty. I'm not saying, look, I'm not generally saying the FBI or the CIA or the NSA, they're all in on it, or they're all liars. There's a select few within these agencies that didn't act in earnest or in all honesty in sharing information that could be valuable with other agencies for whatever reason. I mean, we could speculate, whether they allowed this to happen or it was just basically malfeasance.
The premise of the panel throughout its work has been that all terrorist incidents are local, or at least will begin that way. The panel recommended that a federal office for combating terrorism be established. Establish a system for providing clearances to state and local officials, and that the FBI implement an analytic concept similar to the CIA's reports officers to do a better job of tracking and analyzing terrorism indicators and warnings. Finally, the General Accounting Office has also completed a number of reports for Congress that focus on combating terrorism, information sharing, and homeland security. In addition, GAO's written statement for the record for today's hearing emphasizes the need for a commitment by the leadership of the FBI, CIA, and other agencies to transform the law enforcement and intelligence communities and achieve the most effective information sharing.
Slap on the wrist. Don't do it again. This has got to go, brother. I mean, we got to hold people responsible. I mean, for God's sakes. And if you haven't seen the Joint House Inquiry videos I've done with Carl Levin, Carl Levin is like the only one who really asks the hard questions. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, like I have a lot of videos about the 9/11 Commission. I broke it down, Joint House Inquiry. I believe I'm the only channel to upload both of those in full, but I broke it down to like 5 or 10-minute intervals where each panelist member is interviewing someone from the intelligence community or the non-intelligence community or the government, in which, you know, a lot of these questions basically got vague answers. Oh, I don't know. We weren't privy to that information. We need more money. We were less manpower. I mean, Carl Levin was probably the only one who asked the hardest questions and put George Tenet on the spot. I mean, this is what we need to do. We got to pressure these people. They're not going to tell you everything because for whatever, like I said, for whatever reason, whether it was, you know, saving their own ass or even worse, that they were a part of this. And I don't think that's too bold to say that, considering what we know now. But, you know, having like the Government Accountability Office or having the Inspector General of the CIA or the FBI write a report. I mean, the Inspector General of the Defense Intelligence Agency basically said Able Danger didn't produce any actionable intelligence when it did. The Inspector General report regarding the FBI was a little bit more lengthy, and it basically showed that the CIA and the FBI basically are held responsible for not playing nice. Nobody seems to want to go to that extra effort in saying, why didn't George Tenet or Richard Blee tell the State Department or the FBI that there were 2 hijackers inside the United States? And why did they lie about nobody reading the cable about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi's dual US visas when 53 agents in the CIA's counter-terrorism unit read it? Why did Tenet lie? He lied under oath.
Possible to combat terrorism. In summary,
By the way, did you know a 3rd building fell?
the Joint Inquiry staff believes that much information of great potential utility to the counterterrorism effort already exists in the files and databases of many federal, state, and local agencies, as well as in the private sector. However, that information is not always shared or made available in timely and effective ways to those who are in a position to act upon it, add it to their analysis, and use it to better accomplish their individual missions. Our review has found problems in maximizing the flow of relevant information, both within the intelligence community, as well as to and from those outside the community. The reasons for these information disconnects can be, depending on the case, cultural, organizational, human, or technological. Comprehensive solutions, while perhaps difficult and costly, must be developed and implemented if we are to maximize our potential for success in the war against.
Yeah, and that's the end. Look, you know, there's not a lot to go through there. I mean, basically what Eleanor Hill said at the end is right. But like I said before, this should have been the preface of the intelligence committee in, say, the mid-1980s, at the very least. I mean, we had a number of hijackings, Hezbollah, the armed Islamic group in Algeria. And look, it wasn't a secret that that terrorists wanted to conduct operations inside the United States. This was known even to the CIA in the early 1990s. And who knows what the NSA heard on bin Laden's satellite phone for 6 years, and especially in the 6 years that they were listening to the Al-Qaeda communications hub in Yemen. Who knows what the hell they were talking about in those phones? Were they talking about operations? Were they talking about people? Were they talking about potential operations? Were they talking about sleeper cells inside the United States or abroad? I mean, all that would be known. And like I said, information is the ruler, and whoever has the most information can rule all. And I will stop it there, because unless we start asking the right questions, we're going to be left getting the wrong answer.